Hello. Good afternoon. Hope you're still awake. This is a talk about incidents that had happened at VG and how we handle with them. There's a small problem with the HDMI here, so it's flickering, but hopefully we'll get through it. I'll turn down my sound. Yes, my name is Audun Ytterdal. I'm the head of operations for VG. Unicycler, used to hack on C64 computers back in the days. Got a master's degree in computer forensics. I've done a lot of open source software up and through my days. I love redundancy. I'm a bit dyslexic, so if you see a lot of spelling mistakes in the slides, that's why. I've done a lot of work on Varnish, and if you want to have me rant about different tech rants, I would love to talk to you afterwards. So VG is Norway's largest newspaper. It was started by the Home Resistance in 1945, online since 1995, and the first non-tech site in the world, accordingly, was to run on IPv6. It's also the Varnish Cache project origin, if everyone want to know what that is. It's approximately 2.5 million unique users per day. Usually hits a lot of, get a lot of traffic. Around 100,000 hits per second, 6 gigabyte peaks, peaking around 20 gigabytes, around a petabyte sent with data each day. Video adds another chunk of data. We got 2 co-locations in Oslo from 2 different ISPs, in addition to a lot of stuff on AWS and also a few other clouds like DigitalOcean and Google Cloud and so on. We are part of Schibsted, which is a print business started in 1839, and it's currently 75 brands across media, marketplaces, and startups. You might know some of them. So what are our challenges? Since we are a newspaper, digital one, we need to have speed. Developers make web apps based on current news events. If something happens, it be any COVID or a tsunami or a nuclear disaster or something, we need to write about it, but also a lot of our developers make web apps that sort of can be used to enrich the news experience. Which means that the lead time from our ID to deployment is usually counted in minutes and hours instead of days and weeks and sprints. Which also gets you into a lot of security issues where security sort of has a second place after speed to get things online. We also need to be available. Journalists must be able to work from all over the world, including in hostile conflict areas like Ukraine or China or in Palestine. News is perishable, which means that it's fresh. It's the most interesting when it's fresh, but once it's been published, it can't be unpublished. Anything it's written in Norwegian law that once something has been published, it needs to stay there. And it's uptime. We need to be up, also during catastrophes and wartime. News events are very sudden, so scaling is hard. The means being that, for example, AWS Autoscaler is way too slow to scale up during a news event. You need to kind of scale for that. And what we write can also make someone angry. Being a person or a group or a country, which usually leads to attacks. We also are in need of trust. We need to be trusted by the public. Journalists need to be trusted by their sources. Journalists need to trust their equipment. And we got stuff like the WikiLeaks, the Panama Papers, football leaks, and secure DOP tips coming into our setup. Journalists need to trust their equipment. And we've got WikiLeaks, as I said. We also have the risk of defacing, fake news, a lot of third-party vendors. We got ads. And we also, in some cases, need to trust third parties outside our own country and legal entities. And our site is an attack vector for our end users. I'm going to talk a little about that later. So how do we do this? I'm just going to quickly go through sort of our defense in layers. We have DNS. We control our own DNS. We got CDNs. We use BGP, ISPs, big IPs, Nginx, and Varnish. First of all, we control DNS. and using Norwegian vendors. We have DNS, we can switch to wherever the service is needed to be run. We own our own IP addresses, so we can take our addresses and move them to a cloud provider or an on-premise provider or a co-location provider or what we want to do, or we can also announce it several places. So during peacetime, we announce it from our 2 data centers in Oslo. Currently, it's a sort of a shaky area. Then we announce the /23 from Akamai as well. So Norwegian users will go directly to our sites, while people from outside Norway will go through washing centers from Akamai. And if someone attacks us from within Norway, we announce all our traffic through Akamai. We also use a lot of CDNs just to kind of offload our own setup using Akamai and CloudFront and Fastly. We use 2 different ISPs. They block all our UDP at the edges, and if one of them fails, we send everything else to the other one. And we use AWS North, which is in the 3 availability zones there. Then we have some big IP equipment. This is mostly for DevOps people. We use Nginx to terminate the traffic. There we do ISP throttling, meaning that if your ISP is identified to be outside of Norway, we will throttle you based on the number of requests from that ISP. Not country, not anything else, but if you're foreign, your ISP will be throttled. And when we also make Varnish, as I mentioned earlier, that's a web cache, a router, a sanitizer, a paywall, an API gateway, and used for all our stuff. It's also meant to kind of filter in traffic and stuff like that. It's created by us, but now used by Fastly and Twitter and Twitch and Pinterest and Facebook and Tesla. And I also heard that like Roblox and TikTok is using that for all their video equipment. So what happens then? We got a lot of incidents since we've been so online for such a long time. We get DDoSes, distributed denial of service, overload attacks. We get them several times a month. Currently, we get them every day, multiple times a day, since the Ukraine crisis. Last really big one was the 29th of July 2022, which was about 600 gigabits per second, run by Killnet and NoName. That costs us up to 1.3 million Norwegian kroner just fence off. Fun fact is kind of the logo they use there is one of the Norwegian politicians. They use some AI to create their logo based on Norwegian politicians. It also happens when you least want it. It's planned to be hit when the least amount of people are available. Typically in front of Easter, in the middle of the Easter, midsummer holidays. For me, the large attack there was one of them was when I was in Legoland with my kids. The next one when I was sitting in the car with a lot of lions around me in the Danish lion park. The last DDoS we had was on Monday when I was supposed to write this presentation, a part of it. Then we had a DDoS, and we had a DDoS 10 minutes to New Year's Eve this year. So I was on my way out on the porch with rockets with my kids. I got an alert that we need to go back in and work. We have a lot of attacks by anonymous. That's usually because we mean something on the news. We meant something about the data lagringsdirektiv, which is sort of the Norwegian security data law. And when we wrote the article in positive light about that, they started attacking us. It was a massive DDoS within Norway, really hard to solve. So we started talking to them on IRC and everything and just said that, okay, it's fine to have the different opinions. We agree with you, but that's not a good way to go ahead. And then that saved everything until one of the journalists tweeted this. So don't tell your journalist that we fixed it, because then everything is up and running again. We had a guy, the E24, which is one of the sister sites we also run for in VG. This is an actual image from the front page of E24. You had a third-party vendor that was hacked, and someone put the image of themselves on the site. Unfortunately, we forgot to remove the geolocation, so we looked it up, and we called his mum and asked him to stop. A media house in trouble. A competitor of us was a receiver of several DDoS attacks earlier. This is a few years back. I'd been down for at least an hour a day, multiple times. We also knew that we were having these attacks, but not affected because we were sort of made to handle it. We agreed to reroute the traffic through our load balancers and kept them up and running to figure out the case. And then we started to look at these people. They had the beautiful name of .NET fuckers, a part of UG Nazi group. They used Twitter to brag, and some of them, we got in contact with them because they like to talk about themselves. And one of them said that they used a tool called Nightlight, and the other guy said that I made the tool we used to DDoS you. And then after a lot of searching in good old SourceForge and some other places, we got a scoreboard with their other nicks and a photo of a town. High resolution, taken with a sort of a Canon camera without geolocation. But we saw there was a southern Norwegian town, and we managed to see the reflection on a logo on a van in the shop window, and found that the area that plumber was operating, and we used Google Street View to find sort of where this image has been taken from. And then we just turned 180 degrees and saw the house that was taken from, and then we sent the police there. And that was the correct person. But mostly we DDoS ourselves. This might be relevant for the developers among you. But the way you can sort of take down a site like ours is trashing the cache. Like Varnish is sort of keeping everything up. If you send a unique URL, or you use post, or use authorization headers, or somehow puts a lot of set cookies in a backend, which makes the cache unavailable, or you use like a lot of frameworks are doing millisecond timestamps to just make sure you got the freshest object. Or you send, or some frameworks, for example, on arrow page or 404 sends max age 0 or no store or no cache, which means that it can't be cached, and it's very, very easy for attacker to take you down. Or vary on a very varied header like user agent. We had a lot of trouble with slow traffic, and we can handle lots of traffic, a lot of bandwidth, but our main problem is during the summer, when people are in parks or at music festivals, and everybody is sharing a single 4G or tower, and then suddenly all the clients become very slow, and then you have to handle all of them, even though they're not sort of doing anything. My pet peeve about how to set up stuff is also thundering herd, and raise the hand, everyone heard the problem of thundering herd? 5. Awesome. Thundering herd problem is that the internet is a bumpy road. Queues happen, errors happen, timeout happens, and all unrandomized traffic tend to converge to a thundering herd. Thundering herd is sort of the way of a lot of animals will start running together, and at some point they will start more or less marching and then kind of breaking up the ground. And for example, if you have a JavaScript thingy that does an interval every 10 seconds, and you have 1,000 users, and they do that every 10 seconds, things are pretty good. That's about 100 hits per second. But then internet happens, and then just after a while, everybody starts converging towards or starting marching in the same order. And suddenly you have 1,000 hits per second, and you haven't really done anything. And if you have starting to have downtime of this, it gets even worse, because then you sort of gather everyone, and when you then get up and running again, everybody hits you at the same time. How to solve it? Whenever you do something in an interval, introduce randomness. Instead of anything at every 10 seconds, you do it between 9 and 11 seconds, just to kind of break things up. And if you have an error, you should try again, but in a random and very long interval. Or in our case, build software to sort of handle a lot of users with the WebSockets, for example. You wrote our own WebSocket in implementation to kind of handle the Norwegian population. Just this is an example where we went down. We delivered a series called På hytta, which is just sending a lot of comics to a cabin and the rule was you cannot laugh, then you lose points and be expelled. And that's been very popular. We wanted to see when people fell off. So all the players were sending in a how far have you gone in the video every 5 seconds back to our servers. When you get a very popular video, that's a lot of hits. And the problem then is that you can't really do anything about it. Because if you have an app, you can't, there's at least a week lead time from like deploying the app to actually getting it accepted by Apple. So you need some sort of kill switch, or at least be able to adjust the runtime. So if you do things like this, like we do, each API endpoint should return a new interval. So whenever you say, like, you ask for an interval, you get a random interval back, but you also every time you do it, you get your new interval, which means that you can then from server side say that, okay, you have to do it every 20 seconds instead, or every 30 seconds to kind of scale things down. Yes. In addition, we cache arrow pages. We cache 404s. Arrow page is a bit hard to cache because that usually contains traces or information specifically about that user. But you have to do it because once you start having arrows, you need to be able to handle the arrow traffic as well. So what we do, for example, is like whenever there's a 500, we just take that 500 and cache it, but remove every like a sign of that being a specific person, or kind of just recreate a new 500 page. We use, again, mentioned varnish for everything. You can use a lot of tools to find single point of failures. Or make sure that you control your clients, which I mentioned earlier. Another thing I mentioned earlier is like we are a vehicle for hitting other, like we are an attack vector, because since more or less every Norwegian will at some point during the day look up VG and look what's there. If you can get something to run there, it's a perfectly good attack vector for our end users. So we're really not that much afraid to being attacked ourselves, but it's actually our being a vehicle to be attacked someone else that's the problem. We started getting these support mails about got these bad ads, sort of virus selling virus solution that doesn't exist and stuff like that. We do get them all the time. What happens is there's a routers that's hacked. There's you got malware in the machine, and it kind of reroutes ads to their own ad servers. So that happens all the time. But in this case, it's had 2 red flags. It was iOS, and it was in our app, which was a bit problematic. But we still got just 2 or 3 reports each day. But then we started getting more of them. And then we started getting porn ads. And some of our employees got them, but of course they just quickly disappeared. So then I had to ask the most, like the strangest work-related question I've ever asked in my life, asking one of the female journalists, "What kind of porn did you see?" what is to trying to identify sort of what kind of what are we dealing with there. So what did we do? We started initiating what I'm going to talk about a little bit earlier, called IMAS, incident handling. We contacted NSM, which is the Norwegian security authorities, created a live doc starting to investigate about this, disabled all problematic ads, and went through all our codes and buckets and servers and NPM modules and everything. We did some hot patching of new safe iframes and sandboxing violation stuff. And then we wrote an article in VG, which we can do, to get people to kind of report in. This is sort of what differentiates a bit from others. Like if we are defaced, we can write about it, while other people try to hide it. So we collected all incoming data into a G drive and spreadsheet and started investigating it. And we tried to pull some data from this, and of course with some help from the journalists. And a lot of people reported about being in transit, especially in the subway between here, Stortinget, and Majorstua. Usually to and from work. They never got it while they were at work. They only got it like traveling there. So at some point we thought that we are talking about kind of a hacked base station. But 8 out of 10 of the people reporting this were women, which is sort of a skewed statistics. It should be 50-50 or usually it is less. So we went back to ads. And then after a while, we figured out that someone had a company called AdVLAN approached us, the ads team, to buy views on VG for approximately 20,000 USD for an English clothing chain and wanted to sell ads. We checked it, found everything was fine. But what we figured out after testing it, went through all the other ones, is that this specific, they asked to host the ads themselves, but what they did was they checked, first of all, like we gave them the women over 30, because that's what that's what their targeting audience was supposed to be. But when they did that, they measured the time it took to kind of from the first connect to the TLS handshake till they actually sent the get. And if that was beyond a certain time scale, they would then send you the payload. And that payload included several 0 days to kind of escape the Safari sandbox. The only way we managed to do this was to pretend to sort of click on ads that gave the impression that we were female, and then starting to send like a lossy traffic to that endpoint to get the endpoint, to get the payload. Yes. We probably should have seen this a bit earlier. There's a web archive of the site, because we did check them, called them and everything. But the site looked good enough, everything was fine. But the address was in a residential area, and the person Leonard Ritchie does not seem to exist, the one that called it. And that's, of course, that's Leonard Ritchie. So after this, we did improve our background checks a lot. To put my conspiracy hat on, when we started investigating more, the trails were running towards the King servers and Vladimir Fomenko, which is one of the guys that's sort of more or less proven to have sort of interfered with the American election. So we think this might be a potential probe from the Russians. And we know, because we know that troll factories fire up on both sides of all dividing issues. We see that in our commentary fields. In addition to that, at that point, both the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, the Defense Minister were all females over 30. So they were specific, like they could easily think that that's a very good way of attacking them without sort of looking at the typical like security analyst sitting on like a fast fiber network and trying to figure this out. So how do we handle these incidents? We have a framework called Incident Management at Schibsted, IMAS, which is based on the Google Incident Management at Google, which again is based on a wildfire incident response from California, I think, back in the days. And it's a sort of a written framework for incidents, how you should go along with them. And it scales up and down for the smallest incident to the biggest incident. And we made some tooling for it. Like the sort of the central part of this is a live document, which is you create a document like this. Do I have internet? Yes. So this is a security incident about Okta having issues, where you have a template where people can add in what is this, what's the status, what's the current theory of Scratchpad, what we are supposed to do, what's been done, what's been affected, what kind of things needs to be run there, the timeline for people when things started, and so on. It also has a postmortem section, which is not used here, but which means that you can quickly go over to a postmortem mode where you sort of look into what went well, what did not go so well, and action points to be able to handle it afterwards. Yes. So it has some roles. You have the incident commander, which is the owner of the incident. If you figure out something that's not as it's supposed to be, you are, per definition, the incident commander. no matter who you are. If you're a journalist, or if you're a journalist or a developer or security analyst, you are the incident commander. And you are until you give it to someone else, and someone else accepts that. So you are in charge of running the incident. Doesn't mean that you have to do all the things, but you are, when it started, you are responsible for everything. And then you should delegate to other potential roles. Usually, for small incidents, the incident commander does everything. But on a large incident, you will start sending out communication lead, which is the one sort of taking care of sending out information to everybody related to the incident. And operation lead if there's a lot of technical work to be done and you can't do it yourself. And the important things that you should always have is sort of the live incident document, the LID, which is what I showed you just now, which is just a to-do list and gathering on all of the information. And then you have the post-mortem afterwards, just to kind of make sure that everything is, they're going to be better next time around when that happens. So the first thing, what happens, you have an incident, you are by definition the incident commander. What you have to do is then create a channel somewhere, like a live channel, like that. It's on Slack or Discord or IRC or anywhere you have your, or in Teams, I don't know. If you have a NOC or a SOC, you can kind of call them to take over from here straight away. And then you post, in addition to creating a channel, you create, in addition you post to the ward channel saying this is happening. And then you alert the stakeholders. And then you make a incident channel prefixed with the year and date. And then you move all communication over to this channel. Like, so there's supposed to be no back channels at all. And then you create the live document based on any template you have. And all of this can, of course, be done without any tooling. There's not a problem, but we made some tooling to help it to become a little bit better. During the incident, you fix the problems, you optionally assign your operational or communication leads as needed. You keep the stakeholder in loop. And if this is a security incident, or a personal data breach incident, which is related, then you have to sort of escalate to the DPO or CTO or the editorial and product leads. Yeah. And when the incident is over, you write the incident report, which is also a part of the LID, where you can just sort of a template which easily can be sent out to all stakeholders, well, this is what happened, which is not the postmortem, but because the postmortem is something you do a little bit later. Yes, if it's a GDPR-related incident, you also do have to do a data breach report and things like that. All of this is sort of found out in the IMS framework documentation. And then when the incident is done, you have this large, ugly document with a lot of strange things in it. You clean it up, and then you invite to a postmortem. And you're moving stuff from the actual document down to the postmortem part and look at the action points and what went well, what didn't go so well, and what you're supposed to do to fix it. And then the next part of this, because this isn't supposed to be easy, and then you need to kind of lower the threshold. And so you need to be doing this often, and it needs to be easy to be done. It can't be scary to do it. So the first thing, you can automate it by pinging the NOC, typically, for us, our sake, is to ping them to start an incident for you. Or you can have a Slack bot. And I was thinking just kind of trying to see if the demo works, like just to see if I can do as a demo. If I go to VG operations here, and I write, oh, it's very slow. You create an incident. You can write an incident title, VG demo for NDC. So, and there you choose, is this a major critical incident? Is it a security incident? Is it a major incident invite only? By definition, a security incident will be invite only. Or is it a low-level incident, non-critical? This is to kind of lower the barrier, because all techies tend to kind of, oh, it's not a big problem, I'll just try to fix it without anybody knowing. So in many cases, we create low-running incident for something that's not really super critical. It is a problem we need to solve, and just kind of gather everyone in the same channel. So I can create that. Then a lot of things disappear, sorry. If I do a major incident, you can invite the NOC to the Slack channel. You can announce in different war rooms. We have multiple. And then you can also announce it in extra channels, which means that you can sort of, okay, something is happening, I'll spread the word across multiple places. So let's see, we just create this incident. And that is done. I'm the incident commander. I forgot to notify NOC, so that is probably a bad idea. Then all alerts will go off. But then, so here you just get the documentation, how you do this, comprehensive guide for IMAS command. If you see top here, it already creates a VC channel for you. Which means that it's just, in our case, connected to Google Meet. And it also has a drive folder where you can upload all documentation related to this incident. And you got the lid, which is now filled out. It's based on a template, but it already has who's created by who, what's the incident, and some things already picked out. And after a while, the IMAS bot will kind of make sure that you kind of alert everybody else. But you can also, so it will ask you to update, but if you do it while you're here, you can either create a new incident or update the current incident. And then you can open the different documents. You can also set what kind of status is this document or this incident in. In this case, it's already mitigated, hopefully. The incident commander would be, you can just give the role to someone else. And then you can arrange for who's going to be the communication lead. Operation lead. You can also announce it to multiple new channels. Yes. Here, like I just set it to mitigated, but here you can say that the notification setting will mean that it will make sure that you let it get into sort of, so you don't kind of deep dive and stop communicating. It will kind of ping you and say, now you need to tell people about what's the state of the incident is. And of course, if it suddenly becomes a security incident, you can invite a security team or invite someone else. Yes. So, as I mentioned, the same document is used for the live incident document, reports, and the postmortems. This is now used for everything. Kind of, if we have like a small, like any team has a small dip in something, and there's a small problem, they'll just use this system because it scales from kind of 2 persons working on something and it failed something and has no impact on everybody else, but they just want to gather the data, to everything is down, it like affects multiple companies, and then you suddenly have a lot of sub incidents and like a larger on top incident that sort of, for example, in our case, we are in VG, we are also together with Finn and Aftenposten and Aftonblad in Sweden and a few other things, and if it impacts everything, you will have a sort of a larger structure around it, but it's supposed to scale both up and down, and then, which means that everybody is on board on how it works. And we sort of have the same terminology, who is the incident commander, who is have the different roles. We also have some additional roles. If like it's a security incident and we need to communicate, we need to have like a PR person that's going to talk to media because they quickly come to our desk. Yes. And this is automating, yeah. Updating the incident. So, just to summarize a bit here, everybody should have an incident process framework in place. Who has that here? 3, 4. Who wish they had a framework? Who has a framework that doesn't really work? Why? Anyone want to share why it doesn't work? Yes. Okay, and what happens then? Okay, so he's saying that the roles are unclear, and then the incident sort of get lost in the one way. Can happen. Now, so I think we run at least 2 or 3 incidents per day, because there are small things happening across the organization all the time. So everybody is on board on doing it, and it's become so interesting. And a lot of journalists have joined the incidents because they want to know what's happening with the system. So now they sort of on board the same way. So now every news incident, like a breaking news event, is now they created their own kind of system where if someone figures out some news, they will actually use the same type of system where they creates a security, which is actually a news channel, and then all the journalists relevant gets in there. There's a lot of local tooling to kind of do automatic AI recognition of speech coming in. They upload all kinds of things, and it kind of get processed, and they sort of deliver roles to them, to different people, and they use the exact same system for news events. We also have a culture of it's completely fine to fail. Meaning that we have a pink cap that if you've taken down VG, you will have to wear a pink cap, or you have to pick it up yourself and put it on your own head. But that's supposed to be a good thing, because you're also told that if you haven't had the hat on for 2 years, you're not doing enough. Then you're probably you don't take enough risks. And we celebrate when you fail. When you take down VG, and you have never done it before, it's a celebration. Which means that people, they're like the threshold of just kind of, I've done something really bad. Let's celebrate, and I'll try to fix it as quickly as possible. Because what we've seen earlier, if people are afraid to kind of do this, they will just try to hide what they've done until that happens. Any questions? Yes.
What are things you would still improve on the system? What are the current pitfalls?
The problem is that after we added VCs, the people tend to take the discussion there, meaning that sort of the log of who did what, when, and where is lost. So it's a bit tricky to sort of go backwards and figure out when did we do that mitigation? When did we do that mitigation? So what we're doing now is sort of all the video conferences are now recorded, and then they're dumped into a other AI system, which we open sourced, which is UU, which is so then kind of goes through the whole thing and then creates text output of the discussions on IRC. On VC. Because people tend, as all techies, they tend to want to fix things as quickly as possible instead of adding to a document like this. Any other questions? Yes?
And if the incident is closed, can be reopened again, or somehow connect different incidents into, I don't know, you mentioned that you can connect them into bigger network incidents.
Yeah, well, they just reference each other, but I could, of course, just reopen this by open the instance. Oops, it's not that open. Mitigated. Now it's active again. Yay! And it's up and running. So, but linking them internally, no, there's not a specific tool to do that exactly. Any other questions? I could try to sort of give a one of the most like useful parts of it is the timeline. So this is where you put in timeline from when things happening, so you can afterwards go in and see what's been done at what point. This makes it so much easier to do a post-mortem and similar things afterwards, or a report to upper management if that's needed. Any other questions? Yes.
The incidents which were listed in downtime, are they manually put there, or is there some kind of automatic putting there?
Like the one in the Google document?
Yeah.
Manually put there, yes. So that's the part of the role of the communication lead, to keep that document up and running. Usually just cut and pasting from like irrelevant things from Slack, for example, or other parts of or mails, and just putting them in there. You can see if I can find a other incident that's been running for a while, 2024. It's on Monday. GitHub runners failed. So just this is how an incident would look. So someone started by me, and then people just started joining. And since people are, it's also posted in the war room. So here you see VG.no. Oops, that's hard to see. You see our incident was posted on the war room of Schibsted. Not super good, but that's fine. Going back to the GitHub, a little better rather go to 23 election, for example. This is during the Norwegian election, and this was a incident started before the election, because we thought this is going to be problematic because of interference from state actors. So we started an incident before there was actually an incident. So this is kind of a preemptively incident. But here you can see a live incident document, which has some more content in it, where you have a specific communication lead. You have from what this has impact on. Currently 3. In this case, we had a problem because we sent out data for all election areas in Norway, but it was so many files, and we by accident did Brotli compression on all of them with the highest compression level and cached them. But there was 6,000 files that got purged every second, so it was a bit problematic for the varnishers to catch up. And then it worked like this, and there's a lot of shell scripting, there's all kinds of things to do, there's some people putting graphs, there's people doing AI pictures that being used to explain journalists what happened. And then it's sort of a mix of Norwegian and English and Polish and Swedish, and just people just use it as like a common nothing board. And you don't have to use Google Docs, you could use, I guess, Office, or you can use any other sort of tooling. So, yes. So here's the timeline. This goes over multiple days. So yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, so when you have an incident, do you have any way to be like, okay, this incident is similar to an incident we've had before, learning from older incidents, like, oh yeah, you have an incident with this type of software. There's all the other software, all the other times we had incidents with this software. I'm guessing like, when journalists do something or programmers do something, they make the same mistake many times.
Yes.
Any way to like learn from your
yes. Well, not really, but since you have Google Docs, it's by the way really impressive that Google which makes a pretty awesome search engine, makes Google Docs search so incredibly bad. But you can search all documents that is incidents and see if they are sort of similar. You can of course use Slack, which is that also. bad at searching, but those two things are the only one. We don't have any kind of layer on top to be able to search across. No, probably should have. Any other questions? No. Why Rabbit? I don't know. It started when I was writing the slides, and I think I need some illustrations. And Google ChatGPT, I can probably help you with that, which probably every other presenter thought as well. And then I was one slide with a varnish, which is we use, which has a blue rabbit as as the mascot, and thought maybe I'll just do that theme then, but it was a bad idea. Sorry.
The new mascot.
It's new. Yes. But no other questions? I think then you can clap.